Understandable English podcast.
Learn English the easy way.
I had the most bizarre existential crisis over the weekend, Jessica. I went to this huge street festival downtown. Thousands of people, loud music, food trucks everywhere. And I have never felt more utterly alone in my entire life. It was genuinely terrifying.
Well, that is a cheerful way to start the morning. Welcome back to the Understandable English podcast, everyone. So, Bryan, you went to a massive party, and instead of having fun, you decided to become a tragic main character in a sad movie?
I'm serious. It was crazy. You know how much I love going out and being where the action is. I thought it was going to be amazing. The weather was beautiful, the sun was setting, and the whole street was packed shoulder to shoulder with people laughing, taking photos, and eating high-priced street food. But the moment I stepped into the middle of that crowd, this heavy wave of urban isolation just hit me out of nowhere. It felt like being a ghost in a city.
I know exactly what you mean, actually. There is a huge difference between being surrounded by a crowd and actually making a connection with someone. When everyone around you is already in their own little groups, screaming over the music, it can highlight your own loneliness.
Yes, that's it. It was so loud, but I felt so isolated. I was walking past these groups of friends sharing churros, couples holding hands, people shouting inside beer gardens. I tried to make small talk with a guy selling lemonade, but he couldn't hear me over the bass from the speakers, so he just threw some change at me. I stood there under the flashing neon signs, and I felt completely invisible. My brain just started spiraling. I had to get out of there.
So, did you run home to hide under your blankets? Because that is what a normal, overwhelmed person would do.
No, I couldn't even find my way to the subway at first because the crowd was pushing me around like a piece of driftwood. Finally, I managed to stumble down a quiet side alley just to catch my breath and escape the noise. The contrast was crazy. One second it was a wall of sound, and the next, just empty brick walls and garbage bins. And that is where I met my savior.
Let me guess. You met an old, wise street philosopher who gave you a speech about the meaning of life?
Close. I met a stray cat, a slightly dirty black and white cat sitting on top of a green dumpster. I sat down on the curb opposite him, pulled out a leftover piece of grilled chicken from a napkin in my pocket, and we had a deep, silent understanding for 20 minutes. I was literally talking to this cat, Jessica. I told him about my week, my anxieties, my career fears. He just sat there chewing the chicken, blinking slowly at me. It rescued me from my panic.
Honestly, Bryan, that might be the most pathetic yet oddly sweet story you have ever told on this show. You went to a festival of 10,000 humans and could only connect with a dumpster cat.
Hey, don't judge. That cat was the only entity in a 5-mile radius that actually listened to me. It made me realize that mass socializing is completely exhausting. If you are listening to us right now, please leave a comment below if you have ever felt this way. Have you ever been to a club, a concert, or a big party and suddenly felt completely alone? Click that like button and tell us in the comments, because it helps us practice real English, and it proves to Jessica that my alleyway breakdown is actually highly relatable.
Oh, I am sure our listeners agree with you. It is a very real phenomenon. But it's interesting because my brain works completely opposite to yours when it comes to crowds. I actually love going to crowded places, but for a totally different reason. I use them to feel alone in public.
Wait, you go out into crowds on purpose just to be lonely? Why on earth would you do that to yourself?
I don't go to feel lonely. I go to feel isolated in a comfortable way. On Saturdays, I love going to that massive, chaotic cafe near the university. It is always packed. People are typing on laptops, baristas are shouting names, espresso machines are banging. It's incredibly loud. I buy a coffee, find a tiny table in the corner, put my headphones on without playing any music, and I just watch the room.
That sounds like a special type of torture. Why would you want to sit in a noisy room full of strangers if you aren't going to talk to anyone?
because the hum of people gives me a strange sense of peace. When I am at home alone, the silence can sometimes feel a bit empty or heavy. But when I am in that busy cafe, I get all the cozy energy of human life around me without any of the social pressure. Nobody wants anything from me. Nobody is asking me questions. I am completely anonymous, wrapped in a blanket of background noise. It actually resets my nervous system.
Wow. So while a crowd makes me feel like an invisible ghost in a tragic way, a crowd makes you feel invisible in a protective way. That is wild.
Exactly. You see anonymity as an insult. I see it as a luxury. I don't need mass socializing to feel happy. In fact, if I have to go to a dinner party, my absolute limit is 2 other people. A total of 3 people at a table is my perfection. The moment a dinner grows to 6 or 8 people, the dynamic changes. It becomes a performance. People start competing for airtime, telling louder stories, and the real connection gets lost.
I can see that. In a big group dinner, you end up having 5 different mini conversations about absolutely nothing, or you just sit there nodding while one person dominates the table for an hour.
Exactly. It's exhausting. I prefer intimate, low-energy connections where you can actually look someone in the eye and hear the tone of their voice. A deep conversation with one good friend over a simple cup of tea is worth more to me than an entire stadium of acquaintances.
You know, hearing you say that makes me feel a lot less crazy about my little alleyway incident. I think I forced myself to go to that street festival because I thought that's what a 26-year-old is supposed to do on a Saturday night. We are told that being social means being in the middle of the noise. But maybe my brain was just crying out for a genuine interaction, even if it had to come from a stray animal.
I think that is a very mature realization, Bryan. We live in a world that values loud, energetic extroversion, especially on social media. But true connection doesn't scale up easily. You can't connect with a crowd. You can only connect with individuals.
That is so true. It really comes down to confidence and knowing your own limits. It takes a lot of confidence to say, you know what? This massive event is not for me. I'm going to leave. Instead, I stayed too long, panicked, and ended up sharing my deepest vulnerabilities with a dumpster cat named Barnaby.
Wait, you named the cat?
Of course I named the cat. He had the personality of a Barnaby.
Right? Well, I think this whole discussion about urban isolation and how we navigate crowds is a perfect bridge into our language focus for today. We naturally used some really great phrases during our conversation that are super useful for intermediate English learners.
Oh, we definitely did. Let's talk about the language because I used a few phrases that perfectly describe my dramatic emotional states. For example, when I was in the middle of the crowd, I said that a heavy wave of urban isolation just hit me out of nowhere.
Yes, to hit someone out of nowhere. This is an excellent conversational phrase. It means that a feeling, an event, or a realization happens so suddenly and unexpectedly that you are completely surprised by it. It's like a car appearing from a blind spot. For instance, you could be walking down the street and a great memory from childhood hits you out of nowhere.
It really does feel like a sudden blow. And when that feeling hit me, I started to feel like a ghost in a city, and I said that my brain just started spiraling.
To start spiraling. This is a very common expression when talking about mental health or stress. A spiral is a curve that keeps turning around a central point, getting bigger and bigger or moving downwards. So, when your thoughts start spiraling, it means you start thinking about negative things, and those thoughts quickly get worse and more chaotic, causing you to lose emotional control.
That was me. Down, down, down into the panic vortex. But thankfully, I escaped to the side street, sat with Barnaby, and I said the contrast was crazy.
The contrast is crazy, or the contrast is stark. We use this phrase when two things are so completely different from each other that when you see or experience them together, the difference is shocking or highly noticeable. For example, if you fly from a freezing, snowy city to a tropical beach in the same day, The contrast is crazy.
It really is. And you used a great phrase when you explained your cafe routine. You said you love to put your headphones on and just watch the room.
To watch the room. This means to sit quietly in a public space and observe the behavior, expressions, and interactions of the people around you without participating. It is synonymous with people watching. It's a very relaxing habit where you act like an audience member in real life.
I need to try that instead of trying to be the star of the show all the time. And finally, when you were describing those awful, massive dinner parties, you said that people always end up competing for airtime.
To compete for airtime. This phrase originally comes from television and radio, where broadcasters have a limited amount of time to speak on the air. But in everyday conversation, we use it humorously to describe a big group of people where everyone is trying to talk at the same time, interrupt each other, or tell the loudest story just to get attention.
I hate when people compete for airtime. It makes me want to find the nearest dumpster and look for a cat. But honestly, Jessica, this has been a really eye-opening discussion. I think I am going to skip the big festivals next weekend and try your method of watching the room at a local cafe instead.
I think that is a very wise plan, Bryan. Just make sure you don't bring any chicken in your pockets to the cafe. It might attract a completely different kind of crowd.
Good point. No street meat in the cafe. Thank you so much for listening to the Understandable English podcast today, everyone. We hope these phrases help you express your own feelings about social situations and connections.
Yes, thank you for spending time with us. Remember to honor your own social batteries this week, whether you need a big crowd or a quiet table for two. Have a wonderful, peaceful week. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, guys. See you in the next one. I tried to watch the room at a party last night, but a wave of anxiety hit me out of nowhere, and my brain started spiraling because the contrast was crazy with everyone trying to compete for airtime.
Bryan, please just go back to your alleyway cat.